About the seeker? Can I ask a question?
Already.
You mentioned that threshold in seeker is exceeded, which makes it a type 1 action. Could you specifically state what thresholds exceeded, or being exceeded?
Yeah, sure, as I cited earlier, it is, sorry, I don't have a table to work from. In the DEC regulations that set out seeker, the type 1 regulations are defined, right? So there's
Right, so what's the specific threshold?
617.4 B6.
Which is? Could you just read it? I want to hear what it is.
Sure. I didn't handwrite, I can read you.
Why don't you summarize it?
So, for activities that are not construction of residential units, right, these are the other areas. Activities, other than construction of residential facilities, that meet or exceed any of the following thresholds, or the expansion of existing non-residential facilities by more than 50% of any of the following thresholds. The threshold's 10 acres. It only has to meet 50%. There's 7 acres being constructed here. 7 acres, the site's being modified. The activity's changed 7 acres. 7 acres is more than 50% of the threshold. So this is a type 1 action.
Can I just interrupt, because I'm listening to this statements being made. We're not altering 10 acres of this property. Okay, what's being the misinformation here is a list of type 1 actions in the code under SEQR under 617.4. If it's not on that list, it's unlisted. If it is on that list, okay, it could be a type 2 action, meaning it's not subject to environmental review. We've gone through this criteria through TAC, we've met with DEC. Not a single one of the criteria that Mr. Parker mentions, okay, in the SEQR regulations caused this to exceed that threshold, not a single one. And I object to his characterization of this project because none of it, okay, again, we work with DEC, none of these meet or even exceed the thresholds of a type 1 action. And it's a specific list, and I'm surprised that, I could read the whole entire list, but given the time here tonight.
D1B.
Thank you, counsel. I was asked to read it in by the expert for the community,
Right,
number one, and I'm reading the list that you're suggesting.
And it's not
I'm
10
reading
acres
the
that are
type
being
1
disturbed, so let's get that straight with the plan.
It says 7, right?
It says 7 inches.
I'm reading just as I was asked to read by the town, the town.
Mr. Parker,
Thank you.
continue.
So,
And if you
I'm
have
almost
any-
done.
No, it's what I'm gonna add.
Yeah.
If you have anything else, what you are stating tomorrow or the next day, just get it to Mr. Letson.
Okay.
And
If I throw it in writing and
let him
sure.
review it.
I will do that.
Okay.
And just thank you. I very much appreciate it. It's very difficult to try to condense this for a few minutes.
And then
It's late
he
tonight.
can get back to us, cause I'll tell you what, was when you were saying, I was looking at this and
Yeah.
I thought, I'm saying, here it is, so.
I got you.
Get it to Mr. Letson and then.
We'll point out the
he'll
7
put it in
acres.
writing to us too.
I will do that. I just for 100% to respond. I am trying to read. I'm reading the type 1 list, and I just was trying to point out that the threshold is hit, because their own documents say it's 7 acres and it's above the 5 acre threshold. So I think we hit it. I mean, you know, the actual decision, you know, the DEC, as I was a former official, that does not make secret decisions for anybody. So the fact that someone's consulting with them is really of no import. It's this board that has the legal responsibility, as you know, ultimately in the end, for how the decisions are made. So I think you'll find, if you look at it, with respect to what's on page 3 and what's in those thresholds, it hits it. The reason I raise it and to raise the other issues, and I'll put it in writing, is merely to say there are a number of issues that are facially identified that are potentially significant. And why do I talk about this? Very simple. I don't know exactly what the board is deciding tonight, but I did see secret on the notice. So I'm presuming, since the EIS was circulated, the draft EAF, excuse me, that we're talking about this because that's what's in front of us. So that's why I wanted to raise the board's attention. That's the reason I presented it.
It's 10:45. I doubt we're getting through everybody here tonight, so. You know, so.
Okay. My last point, one more point, is
Is
that
that Honorable Cornell sitting there?
It is, yeah.
Please, Honorable Cornell, come on.
One last thing.
Becoming a little dishonorable.
One last thing.
One last thing.
I raised earlier with respect to the. I don't want to witness that.
Come on, Mr. Parker.
So I raised earlier the respect to the historic review and whether or not it was checked off in the EAF and why it's relevant. There was a historical appearance before the Historical Review Board, and a certificate of appropriateness was needed. I think this needs to be remanded back. This is to the Architectural Review Board. This is not an approval of a 100-foot driveway. This is an approval under the code, 153-7D, of a project on both sides of a road. So the idea of doing appropriateness, not putting it in the EAF and acting like it's done is not appropriate, and it's out of sequence. And I'll put that in writing.
Strictly advisory. So, whether.
But it's necessary, that's all. It's a necessary.
I'm sure if the town board feels they need another one, it's all for them.
But, no, Harriet, Harriet's going.
I'll put the record.
She's already recognized. She's an official. You'll go next.
Good evening, Chairman Heim and members of the board. I'm Harriet Cornell, a Rockland County legislator, and I chair the Rockland County Task Force on Water Resources Management.
Yeah.
It's on.
You gotta get really close. Let me check.
Thank you. I'm here tonight in favor of protecting our water supply. And I'm in favor of protecting the people who live in the neighborhood of this area. When I found out only 2 days ago that this hearing.
Yeah, it's.
I'm sorry?
Just hold it, just hold it.
I found out only 2 days, it keeps falling down.
Do you want me to hold it for you?
You can take it out if you want.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll manage, Sean. Okay, thank you. I found out about this hearing only 2 days ago, and I learned that the Rockland County Department of Health had sent a message to the agents for Suez with regard to 2 issues that need to be resolved. One of them is whether Suez has made the required application to the Rockland County Department of Health for review of the stormwater management system for compliance with the county's code. The county's code is actually called the county's mosquito code. The second was that the Department of Health requires a registration of the proposed diesel and gasoline storage with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Petroleum Bulk Storage Program. As of late this afternoon, neither of those things had been filed. And I think that's important because, okay, thank you. It's a reminder that, oh, I'm sorry. I think that we need to be very careful about making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before a decision is made, and I'm really here to request that you allow that to happen before any decision is made. I have real concerns about approving plans before knowing fully what the possible risks and dangers are, and I think it's worth taking the time to be sure that everything has been done as it's supposed to be. I mean, there are other places in the country and elsewhere that have suffered losses of drinking water from spills. Sometimes there are different chemicals, and I'm not going to go into the various places where this has happened, but where it has happened, it has meant that people have lost access to their drinking water, sometimes for at least a couple of weeks, if not a lot longer. I'm really very familiar with the area that we're talking about. I drive it all the time. I drive Old Mill Road all the time. There's often problems with the very curvy road. My son and daughter-in-law and 2 grandsons live off of that road, so I do travel it a lot. One of the things I find is that coming across the bridge which crosses the railroad tracks, in the daytime is even worse than crossing it at night, because at night you at least see lights of headlights. But because the road is so curvy, you very often cannot see cars that are coming, that are heading east from Strawtown Road, and it's very, very dangerous. So I think that one of the things that has concerned me a lot over the years, because of the reservoir and the importance of it, is that we also have the CSX lines, which often have crude oil, the Bakken crude oil that is conveyed along those lines, and which creates a great danger by itself. So in terms of, again, I think that it's really very important that all of these issues, and so many issues were raised by people tonight, both by mail and the ones who are still going to be talking, that I think that I really request that you do give thought to all of these issues and not make any decision tonight. And as I said, there's still two major outstanding things that have not happened for our County Department of Health and for the New York State DEC. And let's see if there was anything else. There's a lot more that I could say. I looked over the application, the environmental resources. I actually saw some things that were not answered. I'm not going to go through them, but in the places, there were several places where if you checked a yes, you needed to go on and answer some other questions. They weren't filled out. I think all of these things just have to be done correctly, so that everybody knows what the status is before we make a decision. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Hi, my name is Ray Coco Smith. I'm 18 years old and I'm from West Nyack, and I'm here representing the Rockland Climate Alliance. First, I wanted to thank you all for being here and listening to each one of our voices, stories, and concerns. I also have to lower this because I'm short. Okay, that's better. Okay. As you can tell, this is an issue that hits close to home for many of us, and especially so for me, as this is right in my backyard and many other people's backyards who we have heard from tonight. I live on Green Road, just 5 minutes away from the telecom site. It's a stretch of natural beauty that is seared in my deepest memories. And this is something I know I am not alone in. This is an area of great natural beauty and open space that is difficult to find in West Nyack sometimes. This forest may seem like just another stretch of land, but its importance in the area is unprecedented. When you drive through this stretch, which I recommend you all do before making a decision, you will see how it has become its own miniature community. There are often elderly residents fishing or sitting in the sun near the water. This is a piece of land and water that is beauty-rich and accessible to the elderly and others who are not able to make the trek to Harriman State Park or Rockland Lake. Not to mention the reputation that Suez has in my neighborhood. As a resident of Clarkstown, I have seen the effects of Suez's neglect firsthand. During the tragedy of Superstorm Sandy, I spoke with the father who lived in the home directly across from Suez, the Suez filtration plant, which was completely flooded even days after the worst of the storm had passed. I was 11 at the time, and I have never forgotten the pain on that man's face and the worry he had for his children. The flooding from Suez filtration plant affected almost all of the homes on Jeffrey Court as well. I'd be curious to hear about how that was dealt with. With just a few Google searches, you can read the countless reviews of Suez's service. Over and over and over again, words like zero customer service, money grubbing, and things much worse are seen. The only other water service company that has reviews in the area was the Village of Nyack Water Department. It was 1 review, and it was 5 stars. Suez has 31 reviews, of which only 2 are positive. The hatred for this company is one that goes beyond political affiliation, as we have been universally mistreated. I urge you to read about Suez's past and continual mistreatments on the Rockland Water Coalition website. and to keep this in mind when making the decision to destroy this important piece of beauty for this very, 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 very unpopular company. Thank you very much.
Can everybody hear me? I wanted to address, my name is Dan Taddeo, I live on 367, and I wanted to address some of the supporters who say that Suez has been very responsible. In my hand, I want to give it to you guys. I have found some research, if you just go and do Google, of Suez and lawsuits. I'm going to quote one right here. Suez's response actually mimics what he just did to a fellow guy just before here, where he was like, come on, let's go, okay? So here, it said, Suez response into a legal action was a waste of money, time, and energy that could have been better spent solving the problem of causing water main break in Hoboken. This was an issue where the town of Hoboken sued Suez because they had 15 water leaks in 2 months. So they're responsible. So what happens when the tank is going to leak? Are they going to answer that? No. You know, there's another issue that I want to bring up. You know, they want to be trusty. In this article, I found something that was interesting, that they said that they had improvements and they wanted to put aside $70,000 to help with that. And one of their own people said that it wasn't necessary, that was a waste. Do you trust them? I don't. Okay, another article that I have here, that was also online, and it says United Water, but underneath there it says Suez Environment, and it does make reference to something. In the state of Georgia, Atlanta City, back in '99, they won a contract to support them or to be their water provider. Just after 18 months, sorry I'm shaking, this is the first time I've done this, but just after 18 months, they had a lot of reports, 14,000 reports where they did not take any action and there was a backlog of things that needed. So are they responsible? I agree with Philip. I don't trust them and I don't think any of us trust them.
My name's Joe Villanova. I live at 7 Thomas Court, about 200 yards from the back of the old Tilcon parking lot. With the information that we've heard tonight, has anyone noticed that my property deed has a conservatory easement on it, which goes from my property line down to the train tracks? So is anybody looking at that easement to see if Suez is going to, you know, start building something near that easement line? Because I was told when I bought my house that nothing could be built on that easement. As far as, there was one point brought up today that, you know, nothing was supposed to be done on the property, you know, except for existing buildings. My wife noticed a pump truck in the parking lot.
A what?
A pump truck. And my wife went back to the parking lot and spoke to the driver, and he was pumping out a sewer that was completely filled with water. She inquired as to what he was doing, and he said, I was just told here to come and empty the sewer pipe. So is this something that, you know, they were allowed to do before, you know, anything's been approved here? Because it doesn't sound like it should have been.
Pumping it out to the ground?
No, into a tank.
I believe they were decommissioning the septic, maybe you could confirm that?
That's correct. The property, since it's been there, has been served by 2 septic tanks. Part of what we're going to be doing is connecting it to the sewer and decommissioning those tanks. So the tanks have been pumped out.
Thank you.
Excuse me, on Friday.
I
I can't. Okay, sorry.
I thought nothing was supposed to be done until this was approved.
Just
I'm sorry?
keep on going.
Well, that was just about it. I just need to know. I have a copy of my deed if anybody wants to see it that shows the easement for the conservatory. And I'm just curious to find out if they're encroaching on that easement with the new
Get
parking
a
lot.
copy of it and send it to the town attorney's office. Send it to the town attorney's office.
Just want to clarify, is he referring to the deed restriction on his property or Suez's property? Because it sounds like you're talking about his property.
Well, if the easement is on my property, I'm sure it's on theirs too, because it's all wetlands back there.
The plan shows wetlands, portion of wetlands in the area that's not to be disturbed. It doesn't, the site plan doesn't show a conservation easement over the Tilcon property.
Okay, well, I'd like
But if
to.
if you wanna provide us with a copy of that, we'll take a look at it.
Get a copy of the easement to the town attorney's office.
Okay, but how do we know that they're not encroaching?
Just get a
on-
copy of the easement to the town attorney's office and they'll look into it.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Anybody on this side? Thank you.
Hello, I'm George Farron, and I learned of this happening yesterday. I live on 12 Alexander Avenue in Hillcrest, nowhere near this project, but it concerns me as I see such things going on here and all over the country. The first thing I'd like to note is that the members of Suez here, 3 of them even look people in the face when they're speaking. They're looking down at their papers in their desk, showing no respect, no concern, not really giving a damn about what anybody feels or has to say. The second thing is the procedure that you use, even though it's not in my purview to say so, of issuing a week before or a day before and not really letting people know, or not letting people know at adequate enough time, because there'd be an army here if people knew what was going on.
Yes.
Even with 1 day's notice, this room was packed and outside. So it's only the tip of the iceberg of how people feel about what's going on. And to hear that the company Suez, whether it's on these shores or in Europe, is fracking, shows that they don't care about anybody. I mean, that fracking even goes on. It's just a horror. You all must have seen some footage of people turning on their faucets and lighting a match and flames coming out. That's enough to shut it down. But it goes on. Why? Because there's money to be made. And people don't care about anything but making money. And that's who Suez is. My water bill used to be, I don't know, nominal, maybe $300 a year when I moved up here 26 years ago. Now it's a monthly bill because it got an easy way to make the bills bigger. Let's split it up to monthly. Now it's like $35, $40 a month, whatever it is. And the other thing is they just don't appear to lack any, they lack any integrity in how they act and how they live here. They're supposed to be part of this community. It shouldn't even be an argument. They should hear people don't want this and not do it.
That's it.
Simple.
Yes.
Simple. As a neighbor, if I'm putting up a fence somewhere and my neighbor is part of my community and he really doesn't like the fence, would prefer a fence, these things are worked out. This is what neighbors do. They make it work. And they're not interested in making anything work except money into their pockets.
Yes.
They don't care for nobody, and it's glaring. Even to the point, just an anecdotal story, they went around and they changed the meters, right? I know this is small potatoes, but it just talks to their character. So they changed the meter. So now I have a meter that's digital under the steps, and it lights up so you could read it for like a millisecond. Not even a second. So I can't even read my own meter with the new meter. The old meters, the dials turn, there's the little red one if your toilets are running, you can see it's really running. Nothing like that. I have no idea what my meter's reading. I cannot read it. It's impossible. And then to boot, they come, they change the meter out under my stairs. I don't really go under the stairs much on the high ranch. And when they tighten it, they crack the nut. And so, months later, I look under the stairs, it's black mold, white mold, water, what's going on? And I go in and I see a corroded nut that they obviously broke when they closed it, and I called them and they said, prove it. Can you prove that we did it? Too bad. And so it became my $250 bill to fix what they broke, and didn't give a damn about. So, these people don't even deserve your time. And you really have to stretch this kind of thing out. This can't happen in a week or 2 weeks. People need a chance to know about it and step up and say how they feel about this. Yes.
My name is Molly. I live off Old Mill Road.
Last name, Molly?
Polly.
I'm sorry.
And my school actually partners with Suez. We're business partners with Suez, and every interaction I've had with them has been pleasant. But that being said, I can't stand for what they're doing so close to my home. It's been stated a couple of times about the endangered species in the area, and the bog turtle is actually critically endangered. And I'd like to bring up the Endangered Species Act, which states that they previously said that they don't need any specific permits, any special permits for this construction. But I would like to bring up the incidental take permits. And take, defined in the Endangered Species Act, is defined as to include any actions that harm the species, including habitat modification or degradation where it actually kills or injures wildlife by significantly impairing essential behavior patterns, including breeding, feeding, or sheltering. Now, the construction and the deforestation of the area would obviously affect that, along with if there were to be rain downfall that would push the gasoline and the oils into the forest, then it would impact the feeding habits of both the bald eagle and the bog turtle. It also states that they would need to apply for an incidental take permit in section 10A1B of the Endangered Species Act. You may need an incidental take permit if you conduct otherwise lawful activity where a listed species may be adversely affected, and the purpose of your activity is not for scientific research or enhancement of a listed species.
Yes. Wow.
All right, it's 11:10. We're gonna go to 11:15, and that's it. And then we're gonna continue. No, we're not going on to 11:15. And then we're gonna continue right to it.
Continue another day.
We're gonna continue public hearing.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Hello, I want to thank you all for your time and allowing me.
Name and address, please.
My name is Emmy Udry. I live at 117 North Minden Avenue in Nyack, and I'm a freshman at Nyack High School. I am also a co-leader of the Rockland Climate Alliance. For Suez to build their proposed headquarters next to Lake DeForest, which feeds into a reservoir that provides water to 1/3 of Rockland County, they will have to pave over 98,000 square feet of natural lands. In the process, they will be destroying 1.7 acres of forest land and 0.55 acres of grasslands, meadows, and brushlands, to total 2.25 acres of natural lands that will be paved over. And you can see this in your environmental assessment form. The destruction of this land will set off an irreversible chain of effects that will impact us all. As stated in Suez's full environmental assessment form, there are multiple species of birds, squirrels, deer, rabbits, and field mice that inhabit the area they intend to destroy. These animals will be driven from their homes and become pests to many of the nearby neighborhoods, as well as disrupt the surrounding marine and terrestrial ecosystems. Deer already run rampant in Rockland County, trampling and damaging properties. They are a nuisance to some, and they will only become more of a problem when they are driven from their natural habitats into the yards of Rockland County citizens. Beyond that, there are 2 endangered species that inhabit the area that will be paved over, and Suez has acknowledged in their full environmental assessment form. I'd also like to point out that they did not specify if they were endangered or threatened in their environmental assessment form. They completely left that out. The bald eagle and the bog turtle are the 2 animals that are endangered. The bog turtle is the smallest and one of the most rare turtles found in the United States. There are as few as 2,500 bog turtles left today, and they are extremely sensitive to changes in their environment or the climate. They also have a very limited ability to migrate to more sustainable locations, and destroying their natural habitat will severely impact overall population and make them even more endangered. The other endangered species inhabiting the area is the bald eagle, a majestic and powerful bird that has been on the endangered species list since 1967 and is also the national bird of America. Another concern we have about the deforested area being paved is that contaminated runoff will enter Lake DeForest and the reservoir. I think it is worth noting that Suez does not seem very concerned about contaminating our water sources, possibly because they're in the water filtration business as well.
Exactly.
Your decision to let Suez build their headquarters on Lake DeForest or not is a reflection of where we are heading. Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers, once said in reference to the direction our young nation was heading, "I have often looked at that sun behind the president without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now I have the happiness to know that it is a rising and not a setting sun." I'm imploring you to stop Suez from building headquarters on Lake DeForest and give us all the happiness to know that the sun is not setting on our generation.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question before we have what might be our last speaker? Are we going to have time to hear from Suez after this? Because I know we didn't answer some questions that were asked, and he's going to
talk about the
continue
legal stuff.
That's actually one of my goals.
Please, let her talk.
No, that's not one of my goals. I want to suggest something. It is almost 11:15. My name is Deborah Munitz. I'm from Montebello, actually. I'm one of the board members of Rosa for Rockland. We're a member of the Rockland Water Coalition, and I got a call about this and some emails like within the past couple days. The information for the public at large was not really available. It was just made available today. I took my time to go through this. FEIF, the site plan, everything else, to the best I can. I've prepared written notes. I'm going to share them. I'm not going to read them to you right now. What I can say to you, having, if you continue these public hearings, they're going to continue to vilify Suez. The real issue, and they may all have good reason, but the real issue is this is a land use decision, and much more than ample evidence has been given to this board tonight to make a positive declaration under SEQR. And basically let the public know that by doing so, you are going to force a scoping session where people can submit all of these issues that they've raised and force actual detailed information to be presented, which will help focus people's comments on the issues regarding the site plan, which there are many. And I will tell you, I also downloaded the incomplete FEIF, so some of my comments are related to the lack of completeness. I did find it wholly not representative of the actual action that you're being asked to consider, and I've gone through and basically detailed that. The reality is, when I first heard about it, I was like, office space, great, someone's going to use, Suez, they're going to use this. But once you start learning about, the entire extension and the parking lots and the steep hills and the gas, I'm not going to be the one to say no, because I'm very rational. I like to look at details. The first thing I jumped to, in the site plan was the construction drawings to see, because I couldn't understand. I knew there was some above ground storage, but it also said ancillary storage. It really didn't describe what has been discussed tonight. And based upon everything I've heard, there were some things that got answered that I raised as issues that are no longer issues in my mind in terms of open questions. But for every single thing that I thought was answered, 10 more questions were raised. There's absolutely much more justification than you could ever shake a stick at that could allow you tonight to just simply say, you know what, enough is enough. We're going to do a pause deck. We're going to give the public more opportunities to participate in this process. It is a type 1 action. John caught the statute that I had not caught. I actually was, arguing that this should be a type 1 action, for 617-410, which basically, is any unlisted action that exceeds 25% of any threshold, occurring wholly or partially or substantially contiguous to any publicly owned or operated parkland, recreation, or designated open space. Now, they're gonna get away and they're gonna say this is not unlisted.
No, thank you.
Okay,
Oh, no,
let
that's
me just
enough.
finish my one
No,
sentence.
that's enough,
I just wanna say that you
We're not gonna close the public
you
hearing.
have opportunity to
We're not
make
gonna
that
close the
decision
public hearing,
tonight.
we're not gonna set precedent here tonight, okay? This board for.
I'm suggesting you have several,
We don't know, we don't have enough, we don't
you have more public hearings, but with more information.
We don't have enough information here tonight, okay?
To make a
I've
positive
been on this
declaration and
board
ask for
many
more
years.
analysis?
Excuse me.
All I'm saying is just to have an EIS to give the public
Excuse me.
answers.
Excuse
That's
me.
all.
We're gonna continue this meeting tonight, okay? Because I am not gonna shut down this public hearing, okay? We're gonna continue this public hearing, because there's no way I'm gonna have one resident from the town turn around and say, we closed the public hearing because we wanted to open it up and have more information given out.
I just think it's an offer you could make the public, and I think.
No,
that they will
I'm not
happy to
gonna give that off, because all we need is one resident say, no, you took something away from us.
And they should say that tonight.
And we're gonna turn around and I'm gonna ask Suez, we have March 22nd. We don't have to, May 22nd. May 22nd. So that everybody's here, so we don't have to send out a notice to everybody, there's a date certain. What? We'll send a notice out, but people know that right up front. Trust me, we'll send the note, we'll send it out, but people know up front right now that it's May 22nd. What?
I don't have enough time to send out a public hearing.
Why don't you have enough time?
To meet journal news stamp requirements.
You continue, you state certain, you're continuing to the next public hearing, you don't need to publish it for another meeting.
You're just saying we'll send a 300-foot notice.
300-foot notice.
You don't need to publish it again.
I'm not saying publish it, but you can send it out to the 300, that's fine. Listen, I like a motion, send it, let's extend the footage for this application.
It's entirely up to you.
1,000 feet.
I make the motion for 1,000 feet.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Extend it to 1,000 feet.
I'm sure we'll probably address these comments the next meeting.
They should just accept it. I mean, all
Excuse me.
they should just accept it.
For the public,
They have to accept the contract.
excuse me, the next meeting will be May 22nd, just so the residents, the board here, we took we made a motion that the notices will be extended for residents for 1,000 feet. So notice will go out for residents that live within 1,000 feet.
Same place, 7:30.
Yes, now, if you go on the website, you will see these maps.
But you should hold it.
Ms. Monroe. Here. You take these.
Set up for it.
All right?